So we're talking about a king of England, Henry VIII. That's where I left off because he had some problems with his wives. Actually, his wives weren't so much the problem, but he was wanting a son, and that was a problem to him. So we found out about, first of all, his first wife was the Princess of Spain, Catherine of Aragon. They had some children, but the children died, and then the only one left was one of their daughters named Mary. And we'll find out about Mary in just a little bit. And so he went through and divorced her, and the next wife we go through was a maid of Catherine, and her name was Anne Boleyn, and she became pregnant and had a beautiful little girl. They named her Elizabeth, but he was mad. He didn't want a girl, he wants a boy, and so he beheaded her. So the next wife he goes and marries, and she does have a boy, but she has a sickly boy. Jane Seymour has a boy, and she names him Edward, and he's pretty sick most of the time. He'd cough all the time and be sick all the time. And just he was probably inherited some kind of disease, and so Henry was pretty upset because he has a boy, a son, but he thought he's not going to probably live that long. And so he goes and he marries his fourth wife. How does he do this? He says, well, this time I want a princess. Bring me all the pictures. And they brought paintings of all these princesses. He laid them all out. The princesses of France and the princesses of Spain and of Germany, all these princesses. And he finds one that she looks pretty good. I like her. And so he picks out, picks out Anne of Cleves, a French lady. And so she comes to marry her husband, and he's like all excited, this big wedding, and then she takes off the veil. Ugh! She doesn't look like her painting at all. And he goes in the other room and he says, how am I going to marry her? She looks like my horse. And then Anne, she wasn't too happy with Henry because he had gained a lot of weight. And so both of them were like, okay, let's get this wedding done. And then Henry, of course, him being now able to do whatever he wanted, as the king was not subject to the Pope and he was head of the church, he decided he would divorce her, and they divorced, actually got annulment. And so then he went on and picking another wife, and he did pick another wife named Catherine Howard. And he lived with her, and they didn't have any children. In fact, possibly she couldn't have children. That was the problem. And so what did he do with her? He had her executed too. Number 6 wife, Catherine Parr. And she was a widow before. Actually, she was widowed before a couple times. And then basically she was a nurse. And so Henry started getting sick, and she was good to Henry, and she took care of Henry. But then Henry VIII died. He left 3 children. Who was going to be king? Of course, 2 of them were girls. So Edward, the 6th, was his name, the young boy, sickly boy at 9 years old. He had 2 regents, protectors, that were actually going to act as king during that time. He comes out and they crown Edward king. He does live 6 more years, but he's so sickly. He can barely do anything, so he had to have someone else reigning in his stead. At 15 years old, Edward dies. Who's going to be the king? No more boys. Well, we have the girls. And so right now, England is more of a Protestant than a Catholic. They have actually sent all of the Catholics out as Henry did. And so now they're thinking who? Well, Mary, little Spanish, and she's Spanish. She's now an older woman, and of Spain is very Catholic. And Elizabeth, she's actually Christian and not necessarily Protestant, but we know that Elizabeth loved God. But we're thinking, well, who is going to be queen? Well, right away, what happens? Mary comes in and she says, I am going to be king. Well, one of the Duke of Northumberland, I can't say these names sometimes, he decides that there's another lady, and her name was Lady Jane Grey, and she was a 16-year-old daughter of Henry VII, that she could become queen. So he brings her in, afraid that Mary's going to come and take over as queen, as what she does. But they put her on the throne, and she reigns 9 days. 9 days until Mary got there. So then Mary gets there. She says, I am queen now. I am Henry VIII's daughter, and I am queen. And we call her Bloody Mary. One of the first people that she executed is Lady Jane Grey. Lady Jane Grey was a beautiful, beautiful Christian, 16-year-old girl. She really didn't want to be queen, but she would be there. But then she was executed. Bloody Mary. She started executing everyone. Anyone that was against her, anyone that did not stand up for the Catholic Church. She had spies, Inquisition, as the Spanish Inquisition was then, and she ended up putting many people to death. The people of England did not like her. Everyone was afraid at that time. She reconciled England with the Pope, and she had the Archbishop of Canterbury executed because he didn't support the Pope, and she executed many in England, and then she went and married the Prince Philip II, the Prince of Spain. So Philip comes in 1556, and he really he thinks, well, this is cool. I am going to, not only am I going to be able to reign as king in Spain, but England too. So he marries her. And then what happens? Mary dies. Mary dies without any children. She had taken her sister Elizabeth, and she had put Elizabeth in that high tower and kept her there. And every day Elizabeth thought, surely my sister will come and execute me. Surely. And she thought, she was scared to death. She was good to Mary, and she had done nothing wrong, but she thought Mary will probably execute him. So one day, before Mary died, they came to get her. And then she thought, oh, they're going to execute me. In the meantime, she found out that Mary had been sick and died. But anyway, they bring her out, and she's like thinking she's going to be executed, and they bring her out, and they crown her Queen of England. Elizabeth. Her dad, Henry VIII, the crazy guy, executing his wives, executing her mother. She becomes good Queen Bess. We'll go on in a minute.